Bluff City Media presents Tigers Live with Francis Carlota. Join Francis after every Memphis Tiger game as he breaks down each matchup, player of the game, and upcoming games. Now, let's get to the show.
How about it? No Francis Carlota, but it is Gabe Kuhn in here. We're going to have Roman Cleary here in just a moment. But welcome him to Tigers Live. You're home for a post-game show for Bluff City Media. Today, Tigers get over top 78-74 over the daunted Florida Atlantic University Owls. But they get to their 20th win, and it was over a tournament team, quad one opportunity. And here's the truth of the matter. I don't know if it makes much of a difference in the way of, tournament hopes, at large bid hopes. In fact, I don't think that that's there. But when you talk about confidence, when you talk about finding some energy, it certainly is a realistic possibility that this team has done that. 24-point win at home against Charlotte, who was second in the conference. They follow that up with a nice win over Florida Atlantic. So let's go ahead and bring in Roman Cleary here on this channel here. Now we have Roman Reacts. Let me see if I can pull him up. Roman, what's the word, brother? How about it?
Hello. A few different things. First off, this was a quad two
because it was at home. Apologies.
Yeah, quad two because Florida Atlantic, unfortunately for Memphis, fell out of the top 30 of the net. So the Tigers actually picked up a quad two victory here today. But that's not what matters, obviously, here in this one. It's really revenge, payback, right, for losing to FAU in the NCAA tournament last year. And unfortunately for Memphis, they've kind of played themselves out of a position where it means more, but still getting this one back, I'm sure it's a big one for Penny Hardaway.
100%.
Yeah, and Jaden's still here.
Yeah, okay, I hear you. Now, I look at this game, man, and really the things that mark it are David Jones, Javon Quinterly, Naquan Tomlin saving his best game in a Tigers uniform for this one. What he did today, the energy he brought. 9 for 13 from the field, 21 points, 8 rebounds, good on the defensive end, 3 steals, 2 blocks. It's his best game in a Memphis uniform, and he wanted that. He wanted that for them. Here, David Jones turned it on late. 25 points, 11 rebounds, 2 assists. 6 assists, 0 turnovers. 0 turnovers by the end of this whole thing. And then the Tigers ultimately, what really marks this game to me is when you look in the turnovers, Roman, only 5, and they only had 2 going into halftime. That's absolutely nuts when we think about what this team has done all year.
Yeah, and FAU had 12. There were a lot of concerns about, the absence of Malcolm Dandridge and how that was going to impact this game. And I think we saw it with the way that Vlad Golden performed. He finished with 22 points and 7 boards, if I'm not mistaken. But outside of him, I felt like Memphis still fared very well on both the offensive and the defensive glass. I believe FAU still finished with a slight advantage in the rebounding category, but they held up much better than what you would have expected. I actually see Dusty May and Vlad Golden making their way over to the press area, right. So I believe I have to go.
Okay, I got you. I hear you. Well, Roman, appreciate you.
All right, bye.
But yeah, I mean, I look at this game, and really what it comes down to is the fact that the Tigers really held their own in the rebounding department and didn't turn the ball over. And when they did turn the ball, or get Florida Atlantic to turn the ball over, they converted a lot of those opportunities. They won the points off turnover battle 18-5. And they didn't, allow a whole bunch of open three-pointers. They closed out on the three-point line well. Now, there were times in this game, something I've been calling for a long time, is, Penny to just strictly sort of play half-court defense with this team, because when they get overextended, when they have to react very quickly, they tend to struggle. But, he did overextend at times, but for the most part played half-court defense, and they were better for it. It wasn't a great night from the field for them, or a great day from the field for the Tigers. Only 43% from the field. That was a tenth of a percentage point below Florida Atlantic, and they were 5 for 27 from 3. But really what it came down to is the Tigers played clean ball on the offensive end. It just didn't give Florida Atlantic a whole bunch of opportunities. extra opportunities, points in transition, and the Tigers took care of that. Now, when we get to sort of what we talk about here, when we talk about players of the game, I think it's very, very simple. We've had the news about Malcolm Dandridge, who was reported. It was reported on very well by our team over at Bluff City Media. Malcolm Dandridge is being investigated for some type of academic situation, and it looks like he's going to be out for the foreseeable future while they investigate that. So coming into this game, you wondered who was going to step into that place, who was going to bring that energy, who was going to quote unquote play for the city, who was going to sort of replace that production. And Naquan Tomlin, man, there's no doubt he was the best player on the floor today. 21 points, 8 rebounds, 9 for 13 from the field, 2 for 4 from 3. Those 3 steals, 2 blocks. He had 5 offensive rebounds. He and Nick Jordan combined for 11 offensive rebounds, and that made all the difference. They had a bunch of second chance opportunities, and quite frankly, you have to give credit where credit is due to Naquan Tomlin. He has had his struggles. We don't have to lie about it. He has had some real struggles with this team so far this year. Too much fouling, not really knowing his place within the offense. But with Malcolm Dandridge out, he definitely found that role as a 5 and played it to the best of his ability, and it definitely showed through. It absolutely showed through. Now, on the other side, I will say this, and this may have to – it relates a little bit to Naquan Tomlin as well. I think what we're seeing with Malcolm out and likely out for the foreseeable future, you're going to have to be careful about opposing bigs. And I don't have to tell you, you just saw it, whether you were at the game or you were watching on TV. Vlad Golden had his damn way. Had his way. There's no way to sort of to hide that. Now, the Tigers got over top again, 78-74. But Vlad Golden, 22 points, 9 for 9 from the field. They sort of got lucky early in that game. They got a couple of early fouls on him, and he had to leave the game. But he was great, man. He was absolutely great. And going forward, now I'll say in conference, I don't think there's another big that really can compete on the same level as Vlad Golden. I'll say that in conference. But at the same time, you have to keep an eye on those types of guys, because I don't know if the Tigers have the ability to defend guys like that consistently. And, outside of that, John L. Davis shot under his normal percentages from the field. He's right around 50% from the three-point line, 46%. He was 1 for 5 from 3, 6 for 15 from the field. Elijah Martin was solid, but they made sure there was a hand in his face consistently out there at the three-point line. I just thought it was a well-executed, well-competed game. And, I mean, I just sort of sit here and I am trying to sort of make sense of what this means for the Tigers and tournament hopes and what we all thought they could accomplish here about a month and a half, 2 months ago. But I can't really tell you that this means much in the face of the NCAA tournament, because it doesn't. What it does mean is that they've built some confidence and they're playing with energy. And that's all we really wanted to see. It keeps that 1%, 2% hope alive. And honestly, I think moving forward, you may think about, this team, if they can beat Florida Atlantic, sure, they can run through the conference and beat just about anybody in conference. But we've seen so far this year, the consistency has not followed them. I'm glad they strung together 2 games like this with good confidence, with good competition, but the chances of that hanging around on a consistent basis, if this year is any indication, the last 11 games is any indication, we just have to sort of take it game by game. Now, when we look down the stretch of the season, this Tiger team is going to still, have to deal with FAU at FAU. Right now, based on the net, I would imagine that's a quad 1 game, even though this was a quad 2 game because it was at home for the Tigers. But they have at East Carolina versus UAB, who is ahead of them in the conference standings, and then at FAU to end the year. If they can win out, I think you put yourself in a relatively decent position. They're right now, they are 6th. They are 6th in conference behind SMU, UAB, Charlotte, Florida Atlantic, and South Florida. Obviously, you want to get to the top 4. You want to make sure that you get into the top 4 so you can get a bye. If you don't, you have to go 4 games in 4 days. We've talked about that. It's hard to do that. But in the grand scheme of things, they don't hold the keys to their own destiny. They're going to need some losses there from Florida Atlantic, Charlotte, UAB, SMU. One thing about Florida Atlantic that's interesting is the Tigers could gain a game on them if they do win on the road, and they could propel themselves up the AAC standings if that is the case. But they're going to need a little bit of help from other teams. Now, those other teams, those last 3 games of the year for Florida Atlantic, I don't know. You tell me in the chat, because that's what we're going to have to do. I mean, coming up here in the second segment, I don't have a guest scheduled. So we're just going to hammer the chat. We're going to talk about these things. Let me know your thoughts. But Florida Atlantic down the stretch of the season versus Tulane at home, definitely a tougher game than it looks like on the schedule. They have to go to North Texas, and then they have Memphis at home to end the year. So I wonder if Florida Atlantic will take a drop by the time the season ends and we get to the AAC tournament. Will they drop out of that top 4? We shall see. Sort of elsewhere, when we look at over the weekend, what was nice to see is, quite frankly, you're looking to break that tie with North Texas, and UTSA went on the road and beat North Texas, so that sort of helped the Tigers in the AAC standings. So we'll see if that ends up helping this Tiger team going forward. But in the end of the day, I don't want to take the shine off this win. This win was nice. They had a bunch of energy, and they really fought their asses off every step of the way. And I know that the chat's going to go nuts when I say this. I know that y'all are going to go nuts. I can already feel it. My man, Joe Cooper, out of Olive Branch, junior at this point, has spent time in JUCO. This dude has worked his ass off. And I'm not going to act as if on the court what he's giving you from a production and stats standpoint. I'm not going to act like that's really in a massive way affecting the outcome of the game. But what I will say is he has energy, and he is clearly over there. Like, you see him, going to the sideline during timeouts and talking to guys, communicating. That's something they struggled with consistently. That's something they struggled with a lot. And I feel like he's just been an injection of intensity when this team needed it. He's not a guy who's going to put up 10 points a game. He's not a guy who's going to get a whole bunch of rebounds, but he's on ball. He didn't turn the ball over. He's just going to show up and try to bring everybody along with him. It's just energy, man. It's strictly energy. And with a lot of guys out, with sort of things up in the air right now, with Penny sort of deciding who's in, who's out of this lineup, because he doesn't necessarily like the energy from some guys, Joe Cooper has been a bright spot in what has been a tough moment. And I would imagine he'll keep running him out there today. Obviously, he only had 1 rebound and 2 assists, and he only had 7 minutes. But when he was out there, it just felt like the team's rallying behind him for whatever reason. As far as the lineup is concerned and rotations are concerned, I just want to point something out. And I've been critical of Penny Hardaway, as a lot of people have. Chat may bring it up as well. But I've been critical about rotations, how many guys are being played. It's a 6-year conversation at this point. 6-year conversation. I don't know if you noticed, but today it was 6 guys getting minutes. 6 guys for the most part. Every single starter, David Jones, Nick Jordan, Naquan Tomlin, Javon Quitterly, Jaquan Walton, were above 30 minutes. The only other person above 10 was Jaden Hardaway. And then you look at Ashton, Jonathan Pierre, Jordan Brown, and Joe Cooper. 7 minutes, 2 minutes, 1 minute, 5 minutes. Penny clearly decided, in this type of game, in this type of situation, I am not going to play a bunch of different guys. I am not going to do it. He played 6 guys for the majority of the game, and I want to give him credit. You got to tip the cap. After what was 6 losses in 10 games. He's righted the ship, 2 straight wins. And the truth of it is Penny Hardaway has made some very massive adjustments along the way. I see them on offense getting their ducks in a row a little bit better because he said he scripted the game against Charlotte for the most part, getting more offensive sets involved. You see them playing more defense in the half court and switching up their looks there instead of going into the press and overextending themselves constantly. You see these guys just playing with more confidence. I think he had to pull some strings behind the scenes to make that happen because even when their back was against the wall, a week or two ago, they seemed to struggle. I mean, it was last week. Don't forget, we were talking about a loss against North Texas and a loss against SMU that were a combined deficit of 37 points. So I think we need to tip the cap to Penny Hardaway, putting together good game plans and bringing this team along every step of the way. So this is what we're going to do. I have some chats ready to go. Chat, keep hitting me. Keep letting me know what you think about this game. Let me know what you think about this Tiger team and their chances of making the tournament. We're going to go ahead and get to your messages right here on the other side, right here on Tigers Live. But we'll go ahead and grab a commercial break right this second.
There are good coaches that have a system that they want to run. And they'll take these pieces of personnel and they'll make that personnel conform to their system. Great coaches, of course, are the ones that go get the personnel. They pick out these guys that they like, and then they'll take that personnel and they'll say, hey, you do this well, you do this well. We're going to change some things up. Right. We're going to fit this system to you.
Adaptability.
I keep watching this with Penny, and he wants this defensive culture and the thought process behind it to just sort of be his defensive system. And this year has been very telling to me that he has no adjustment off that.
Yeah.
You have to be moldable. You have to be able to change with the times and the talent and the personnel that's given to you. And I don't see that from Penny, man.
Yeah.
I just don't see it.
Yeah.
He wants it to be one way, his way.
Tune into On the Bluff with Christian Fowler and Gabe Kuhn every Tuesday at 12 p.m. on the Bluff City Media YouTube channel.
The next 2 years, if they can find a roster that works with those guys making the money they make, they'll have 2 legitimate shots at titles, I think, for 2 years. And now after that, you figure out what you're going to figure out. Jaren's going to come up again and his money's going to be more. Maybe that's the point where you've got to break it up. This trade deadline and this offseason, acquiring some pieces that make sense for you, not development guys, not drafting guys, acquiring pieces and guys on favorable contracts that fit into your system, that finish those last little bits around the edges that you need. And that's, I think, why the next 2 years are so important. I think that's why the trade deadline is so important, as well as the offseason, because they've got to find pieces that work. They cannot develop guys. They're done with that. They can't be doing that anymore.
Time is done.
Tune in to The Daily Grind with Mark King and Lute Hatmaker at 1 p.m. every Monday through Friday, live on the Bluff City Media YouTube channel.
Back in on Tigers Live, your post-game headquarters for Tigers basketball. 78-74, Tigers get over top. We've already talked through most of it. I will get to the Malcolm Dandridge situation in just a moment because we're going to have to be watching that, and I don't really – we need to wait for details to come out. I don't want to say anything out of turn or anything like that because we're still waiting on the investigation to sort of take place for the University of Memphis before we take care of that. Tigers 78-74, 20th win of the year. Every single year we're looking at Penny with 20 wins. I mean, in the end of the day, I know that there's been some, murmurs and discussions about Penny Hardaway as a head coach, but you're talking about 6 straight years, 20 wins. There's a streak of 6 years. I think it's been pretty nice for him. Now today, the game, as far as their offensive efficiency was not that high, but they did not turn the ball over. 5 turnovers. We've already discussed that. And they rebounded really well, got a bunch of second chance opportunities. 18-5 is what they won as far as points off turnovers were concerned. So this was a game, defense led to offense, and they just played with a lot of intensity. And the 2 guys, I think, that played with the most intensity, I look at Naquan Tomlin. I look at Joe Cooper, even in his 7 minutes. And I also think with the Joe Cooper minutes, only 7 minutes, He actually was second as far as minutes off the bench. Penny Hardaway shortened down that rotation, and he knows it's winning time. He knows their back's against the wall, and I think it's pretty clear how he's going to play this going forward. Now let's get to some of the chat. Chat, hit me up how you're feeling about this win, about this Tiger team sitting at 20-8, 2 straight wins now. What do you think about them going into the American Athletic Conference tournament? Now, I know Diggs. I'll tell you that. Diggs, I've been on here. This is my second straight show. This man is always hitting the chat. He said this game was won on the defensive end and us being able to take care of the ball and not turn it over. Yeah, I think that's very fair. You held a really good 3-point shooting team in Florida Atlantic. And by the way, you have struggled mightily at covering the 3-point line if you're the Memphis Tigers. You have really been bad at that. You've been overextended, especially in that North Texas game. What was it? 15 for 26, something ridiculous like that. But you held a team who's near the tops of the conference at 3-point shooting to 25% from 3. They were coming into the game shooting 36.5, almost 37%. And their guy there at the top, John L. Davis, was 46% from 3. 46. That's a nuts. I know that number is nuts. And he takes it. I mean, he's got 3-4 3-pointers a game that he puts up. He went 1 for 5. So I agree wholeheartedly, Diggs. This was a situation where defense, intensity, effort, and lack of turnovers, ruled the day. Because offensively, it was not the most efficient night for anybody except for Naquan Tomlin, and they definitely came back and made sure that they could handle business regardless. Wayne Kelly gets in. Credit to Penny. He needed to adjust his thinking, and you can see he has. How do I know? JQ was the focus on offense to start this game, and field goal attempts were distributed evenly. And honestly, Wayne, here's the thing about the field goal attempts. David Jones, by the end of the game, ended up getting 20. But the last 2 games, you've seen a good distribution. JQ took 12 shots, I think, in that Charlotte game, and that was the most anybody took. They really have found a way to share the ball a little bit better. And you know what I think that's from is Penny Hardaway talked about it after the Charlotte game. They've installed more offensive sets, and he scripted that game. He said he scripted that game top to bottom. So I think that's let Javon Quinterly play a little bit more under control and sort of understand what he needs to do. I think it's hard as a point guard, and I think we sort of overanalyze it at times. But I think it's hard as a point guard to set up everything for an offense that doesn't have set plays, that doesn't have a whole bunch of movement, that gets stagnant at times. So I think Javon Quinterly has relaxed. But to see him in this game, 6 assists, 0 turnovers, that's all he has to do. I've been talking about for weeks. Javon Quinterly is a guy who has, at his previous stops taken 10 shots a game. That's what he does. But he doesn't have to do that. When we see him have bad games, what does he do? He presses. He tries to put up too many shots. He puts himself in uncomfortable positions. He, even when he has a hand in his face, tries to put up shots. If he just calms down and plays within himself and doesn't turn the ball over, this team has a chance to win every night out against just about any opponent, as we saw in the out-of-conference schedule. Diggs again. Diggs chimes in. We didn't shoot the ball well. Defense carries at the end of the day. Same idea of what you said just a second ago. Wayne Kelly. Wayne, assist-to-turnover ratio above water. Assist-to-turnover ratio in this game. They didn't get a lot of assists, weirdly enough. And it's kind of funny because that stat sort of blows me away sometimes because you'll watch the game and the game will tell you something different. They're sharing the hell out of the ball. Maybe they missed some shots off of assists that could have dropped and could have gone in the stat category, but they only had 11 assists, but only to those 5 turnovers. So yes, I have been saying if you have more assists than turnovers, you can win ball games, and that has been a consistent stat throughout this year. This is sort of on the Malcolm Dandridge front. I'll approach this a little bit more later and throw it back up, Wayne. But Jordan Brown, it would seem that he may have to be more of a factor. You need another big. You need another 5 with Malcolm Dandridge out for likely the rest of the year. And if Naquan Tomlin, which he's shown to do in the past, gets into foul trouble, who do you turn to? Seems like he's the only guy. Seems like he's the only guy. Rory says Penny coached a heck of a game today. I'll give Penny a whole lot of credit. Because when this team loses and when this team struggles and doesn't play with energy, we throw it on him, and he takes a lot of the blame and the criticism. So I'll give him a lot of credit. But I do want to focus, too, on the players. The players played with energy, with intensity, and I'll give Penny credit. He's pulling the right strings. The Joe Cooper type thing, Naquan Tomlin at the 5 and at the 3 last game, giving a whole lot of energy. You give him a lot of credit for the way he coached. But these players are after last week. And it's sad that it took so long because they put themselves out of the tournament and now they're finally playing with some energy because, it's even deeper than just sort of backs up against the wall. But after last week, these players have taken it upon themselves to make something happen. They have taken it upon themselves to play with some heart, to play with a little bit of effort. So, yeah, Penny gets a lot of credit for facilitating that. But you do have to give the players a whole bunch of credit for bringing their damn hard hat and lunch pail every single night. I know Diggs again. Jaden had some good minutes, but he still can't stay in front of anyone guarding. It's kind of funny. I agree for the most part. But Jaden is one of those guys. When everybody was talking about Jaden not getting a bunch of minutes, you shouldn't give him a bunch of minutes because other teams go on runs when he's in the game, and he's been struggling to stay in front of people. He's been a traffic cone. I still think that when we look at this bench, Jaden Hardaway has to get a majority of the minutes off the bench. Like that's who you have to trust because he's built up 4 and 3/4 of a year worth of trust. He's been in 2 separate NCAA tournament appearances. In the past, he's been a guy who just sort of plays within himself and is trusted by Penny. So I tend to agree with you. There's been a step back and a regression, especially on the defensive end. But Jaden is still a guy that is usually in the right place. Is he going to get beat? Can he get beat? Can he, can the talent or the lack of talent sort of show through a little bit at times? But he's always seemingly in the right spots and not being a guy who puts up a whole bunch of shots and can be demonstrative out there. He's just relatively steady. Now, D. Grums, if they play defense like this, they won't lose against another AAC team. Yeah, we'll see. Because still on the offensive end, they're going to have some shots fall, and they're going to have some things go their direction. But if you can beat Florida Atlantic, you can beat anybody in this conference. I'm not telling a secret there. If you can beat Florida Atlantic, you can beat anyone in this conference. Now, on the flip side, and I understand that, the defensive game plan was different when these things were happening. If you can lose to Rice, if you can lose to South Florida, giving up, a 20-point lead at half, you can lose to anybody in this conference. So, yes, if they play defense like this, they won't lose against another AAC team, sure. But we're going to have to see that this defense, this level of closing out on the 3-point line, we're going to have to see that be consistent before I fully buy into it. Diggs, easier said than done, Diggs, on this one. We just need to win the AAC tourney and continue to play defense. The second part, yeah, that seems easier than the first part. You can play some defense. Win the AAC tourney. Right now, they have to go 4 games in 4 days. 4 games in 4 days. That is not – it's not easy, Diggs. It's not easy. And then D. Grums, again, same game plan as against Cincy last year. Let their big have a game and a losing effort. Yes. And they were struggling with big depth last year pretty substantially. Victor Locken, that was his name. Victor Locken went for 30. I remember that game like it was yesterday. Victor Locken went for 30, but they closed out on the 3-point line and made sure that Cincinnati was not able, and they were a decent 3-point shooting team last year, made sure Cincinnati was not able to get up a whole bunch of shots from outside or knock down a whole bunch of shots from outside, and that made all the difference in the world. Let's see. Chat, keep hitting me up. Keep hitting me up in here. Last 2 games, Penny has been coaching. I agree with you, King Meeks. This is a different style that Penny Hardaway, like his intuition. Penny Hardaway's intuition at all times. Let's be a defensive-oriented, full-court pressure team. Let's play a lot of guys. Let's rotate a lot of guys in. He's gone against his intuition. And I'm surprised it took so long because he needed to make these adjustments with these teams with this team a long time ago. Play half-court defense and install some offensive sets so they can, calm down. I know what Penny wants to do on the offensive end. He wants to make sure he runs some pro-style sets, let them have some freedom. But sometimes when they abuse that freedom, you need to take it away from them. You need to snatch it from them. And I think he's done that for the most part. Diggs, JQ still looked about 4 bad shots where I just didn't understand, but he played well given that he didn't turn it over. I think that as long as he plays under control, we are better. Diggs, I've been saying this for weeks. It's a guy, if he plays out of his normal realm of what he can do, if he tries to press and do too much, which he doesn't need to. You have more than enough talent in that starting lineup that you don't have to be the offensive firepower. We saw that from Naquan. Of course, we've seen that from David Jones. But if he just plays under control, plays within himself, this is a guy who can consistently give you decent minutes and consistently lead to wins. I've talked about it on several occasions, but he's the head of the snake. If he has a bad game, they're going to lose. If he has a good game, they're going to win. And honestly, even if he just sort of has that middle ground game, he gives them a chance to win. He's just got to take it upon himself to be a game manager. We talk about game managers all the time when we talk about quarterbacks. Cam Newton, if you follow the NFL, Cam Newton's been talking about this. Brock Purdy's a game manager and game changer. He doesn't need to be a game changer. He doesn't. He just needs to manage the game, limit his turnovers, get his other teammates involved, swing the ball when necessary, and knock down open shots. It's really easy. He's just got to let the game come to him. When he starts forcing things, it becomes a big issue. King Meeks, is Penny finally growing into a good coach? Now, okay, timeout. Big timeout. I talked about this. 20 wins in each of his first 6 seasons. He's a good coach. Good coach. Now, when it comes to being a great coach and taking that next step, I don't know. These last 2 games give me hope that can happen because the adjustments are against his normal thought process. Because there's good coaches versus great coaches. I'll explain this again. I know that we've talked about this on several occasions. You probably saw it in the commercial break. And by the way, listen to On the Bluff, shameless plug. It'll be out on Tuesday at noon. But good coaches are coaches that come in and they have a thought process behind what they want to do, right? We want this for Penny. We want this defensive identity, and everybody that I bring in, talent level high, talent level low, they're going to buy into my defensive identity. Now, a great coach going from good to great requires you to say, okay, I have this talent. But you know what? This defensive identity I'm latching onto, maybe it's not the best with the personnel I brought in. Maybe they're more, we need to stagger the thought process more offensively. Maybe we need to change around, play half-court defense, which he's done the last 2 games. Making that step from good to great is you conform your game plan and your identity to the players and the personnel you have. So I want to see him consistently do this. The last 2 games give me some hope that can be captured by him, but we shall see. I know Diggs, JB can play. I think that since FAU goes 4 guards, hard to put him out there in the pick and roll. I think that was probably the biggest issue. And also Naquan Tomlin was not struggling massively with fouls. I mean, he got his 3rd foul with about 9 minutes left in the game. If that's the case, you keep Naquan out there as long as humanly possible. I don't know if Jordan Brown should be a guy that you just, throw in there for 10 minutes a game. We haven't seen his ability to do that. And I think against Florida Atlantic too, you talk about the 4 guards, pick and roll. In Florida Atlantic games, if you watch them consistently, they get up and down the floor. That's a problem for Jordan Brown still. I think he's done better with his conditioning as the year's gone along. He sort of played himself a little bit into the right condition, but it's just not the best fit for him in a game like that to get up and down the floor. Jaden is stable. Agreed. Shout out, Diggs. I need you to agree with me. King Meeks, think maybe this team is finally buying into playing defense other than Golden. Well, the truth is they didn't really have anybody to defend Golden in any meaningful way. If you had Malcolm, I think Golden would not go 9 for 9 from the field. Like that, it's just my hunch. Naquan, as much as I love his game and as much as I respect the hell out of how hard he played and the production he put out there today, He's not a guy who's built to just, bang with these other fives. He's not a guy who's just built to be a dirty work guy. He can stretch it out to the 3-point line. He can put the ball on the ground. He's a little bit more of a finesse five when he's put into that type of position. Said, what you guys, three guys got to say now? Larry Kelly. Now, this podcast is a penny hater. I pray that you guys that getting pay for this. Okay. It's a little mistyped, Larry. But what do you three guys got to say now? This podcast is a penny hit. I don't understand. Listen, there are moments when you criticize Penny Hardaway, just like as every coach around the country gets criticized. When expectations don't meet reality, the coach takes the fall for that. That's the truth of it. And when facts change, opinions can change. I just don't get the thought process behind this. I've talked about it. Some people will view criticizing Penny Hardaway as negativity. And I think Penny does for the most part. He views that as negativity. But in the end of the day, when you lose 6 of 10 in the American Athletic Conference, a conference that you are begging to get out of right now, that's reality. If you're not making the adjustments on the fly, if your team's not playing hard, who does that come back on? That comes back on Penny Hardaway. The last 2 games, he's been great. I thought he's put out good game plans. He's got the team playing hard. So you give him credit for that, and you've heard us give him credit. But sometimes negativity or reality gets mistaked for negativity. It's not negativity. It's just reality. USA, okay. Memphis needs that energy on the road against FAU. Absolutely do. No question about it. Also, there are times Memphis doesn't get back on D and messes up leaving guys open for 3. Unfortunately, the Memphis FAU sucked at making a few of those wide open threes. Yes, there was a couple today when they overextended the defense and tried to get in that full court press. But Penny's sort of moving away from that. And we'll see what the game plan is going forward and sort of the idea of what he wants to do against different teams and different makeups of teams. But the reason, and I remember the UTSA game was big for this, North Texas, the biggest, 15 for 26 from 3. When he tries to speed teams up and puts this particular personnel he has into a full court press, it leads to a lot of runouts and a lot of open guys. And you're seeing a little bit less of that the last 2 games. But when he does overextend the defense, tells them to pick them up full court, they'll break the press, and inevitably somebody's going to be open. Because his team, communication and their scramble ability to go get back into the right spots defensively, not as high as teams in the past. Larry, Penny is the coach of the year, hands down. Okay. All right. Moving on. UAB is good with Gaines, and SMU is good. I think those are the 2 teams to beat in the AAC. You're not going to put Florida Atlantic in there? The team that's the highest rated seed in most bracketologies in the AAC? What are we talking about? Of course, it's FAU at the top. And UAB's fine. SMU's pretty good, but they're not a tournament team according to most bracketologists. It's Florida Atlantic and South Florida. So I think those teams would be decent, wins. And yeah, they're to be taken seriously, but it's still Florida Atlantic and South Florida at the top. They're first in the American Athletic Conference. I'll get to a couple more of these. Wayne Kelly, mindset adjustment by Penny. That is a good sign of a good coach. FAU was prepared to play against a different team that showed up today. Exactly right, Wayne. When you give guys a certain look all year on film, and then you switch it up and you make the requisite adjustments, got respect for you. You're a good coach. Agreed on Malco versus Golden. However, I don't think Tomlin has the game he had today if Malco is available. No knock on Malco. That is a very, very interesting conversation. I think I tend to agree because Tomlin had to take a lot more as far as pounding the offensive glass, and he got some putbacks there. And when he's at the 3, he doesn't get around the rim as much, and he's going to take some threes, put up a lot more shots from outside. So I guess I sort of latch on to this. I think this is a fair thought. And then final one I'll get to here before I sort of wrap this thing up. Richard, yeah, losing 6 conference games is unacceptable. Well, considering what we thought of this team, where they were ranked at one point in the AP top 10, it really is. It's unfortunate that we're at this point where you have to play yourself in using the American Athletic Conference tournament. I don't think any of us think that's impossible anymore after watching these last 2 games. But having put yourself in this position, it's frustrating, man. It's very frustrating, and I completely understand that. Now, I wanna hammer this out because I know there was a lot of talk about it over this weekend. Malcolm Dandridge is going to be out for the foreseeable future, and it has to do with an academic situation that arose. As of right this second, there were some thoughts that it could be more guys that were going to be investigated for this, but right now it is centering around Malcolm Dandridge and an academic counselor. When it comes down to what this means for the rest of the year, it just means that you're thinner at the big position. You're going to have to throw Naquan Tomlin and Nick Jourdain in there, and they're going to have to play a lion's share of the minutes. And what does that mean for Penny? You're going to have to back off, not get into these full court press situations and have them running all over the floor. You're going to have to conserve energy. If Naquan Tomlin or Nick Jourdain or one of these bigs has an issue, if they're hurt, if they get into foul trouble, here's Jordan Brown. And then after that, you're just sort of SOL. You don't have much left behind Jordan Brown or behind Malco to really sort of fill in and make these things happen. Now, what does this mean for Malcolm Dandridge? I'm sad. I'm sad for him, man. You thought the final year, and he graduated already, so he's got his degree and everything. And I don't know what other basketball opportunities are going to sort of come to light for him. But Malcolm Dandridge has meant a fair amount to this program. Now, I think that the injuries and him having to be off the floor, sometimes his conditioning got in the way because of the injuries. I think that's sort of how we'll remember his career. But this year, man, with all these moving pieces, he was one of the guys throughout the year who Penny could clearly latch on to consistently. He was a guy who understood the culture, understood the city, and I thought this year was his best ball he was playing. And the fact that that's going to be gone is sad. Not only sad for the people the fans that watch the program. You really wanted to have him in there. It gives you the best chance to win night to night. But for him to put himself in this position, you just feel bad. You feel bad. Now, I think, in the end of the day, what they say, don't do the crime. If you can't do the time, I guess that's sort of part of it. We'll see what the allegations are officially once the University of Memphis does this investigation. But if there was wrongdoing, he, quite frankly, will have no one to blame but himself for the way these things have gone. And I've seen this too. And this is the final thing I'll address, and then I'm going to get out of here. Penny Hardaway, what does it mean for Penny Hardaway if this goes bad for the University of Memphis? I don't know. I don't have a real answer right this second. If it is very intrusive and it's not just Malcolm involved and it's like a lot of different players, it could be very bad for Penny Hardaway. We're talking about 3 separate incidents in 6 years. Now, I know that he can wipe his hands clean from the James Wiseman thing, but he was suspended to start this year. And it was recruiting violations. But there's been 3 separate incidents that have come to light. 2 by the NCAA, 1 by the University of Memphis. And they're trying to get ahead of it because they don't want the NCAA to get involved as heavily as they have in the past. When you talk about 3 separate incidents off the floor in 6 years, it puts you in a predicament, and it's up to the University of Memphis to decide if it crossed the line this time or if it didn't. I would say if it's strictly sort of Penny Hardaway Malcolm Dandridge doing these things, I don't know if Penny Hardaway needs to be held to account, held to the fire for Malcolm's misdeeds. But if it's something he knew about, if it's something where, we find out that several more players are involved, this conversation could get a little trickier. But we're just going to wait and see. Now this will be, and not that I won't join the show. I'll probably join when Francis comes back, but Francis Carlota has been off doing his bar exam. That's why I have gotten the last 2 shows. And you know what? I think I bring good luck. If you've been looking at these last 2 games, man, maybe I'll have to come back again. We'll have to talk to the bosses. We'll have to talk to the higher ups. But they beat Charlotte 76-52, beat FAU 78-74, both at home. Last 3 games of the year at East Carolina versus UAB, at Florida Atlantic, which should be a massive game before they get into the AAC tournament, where they're likely going to have to win out and win the tournament to get in the NCAA tournament. But you know what, guys? It's been fun. I'll probably be joining Francis when he returns at some point, but appreciate you listening. And Francis, we'll be back coming up on Thursday after the East Carolina game, which will be at 6 p.m. This has been Tigers Live.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Tigers Live. If you enjoyed this episode, like and subscribe to Bluff City Media's YouTube page. For comprehensive coverage of all things Memphis sports, head over to www.bluffcitymedia.co and find out how you can become an insider. We will see you back here next time.